Hello, my name is Kay. Welcome to the K Touch, where we have art with conversation. I am very privileged to introduce Sean Tyler Foley, who is a versatile performer. He has a lot of experience performing on stage, but also has notable appearance on TV and movies as well. So Sean has been on Freddy versus Jason. He's also been on Carrie, and interestingly, he's a keynote speaker and has written a book, The Power to Speak Naked. I have Sean here to really talk about public speaking. Welcome, Tyler. It's good to have you on my podcast today.
Okay, it's a joy and a pleasure from one artist to another. Thank you for having me on.
You have been around. I've seen you on a number of podcasts. I think you've come up to close to 300, and you have a lot of interesting things to say. And I'm going to be picking your brains on public speaking. And a lot of the questions I'm going to be asking, like I like asking questions that would possibly throw people off balance, but I think you're going to be able to handle some of the questions that I have here. But let me just start off with your journey. How did it start for you, this whole idea of public speaking?
I mean, very similar to the line in The Princess Bride, Vicini said, go back to the beginning. So here we are at the beginning. I, I was a born performer. Like I was always that kid at the dinner table who would, we'd have family dinners and I wanted to show people, something on the piano or the painting or the drawing that I had done or, do a magic trick or something like that. I was always looking for that validation. And at a very early age, like elementary school, first grade, my teachers recognized that in me. And Mrs. Nielsen quickly put me in the Christmas pageant as Joseph, and that kind of started that journey on stage, right? Where I got to be the center of attention and get a laugh. And I'll never forget that pageant because it was the first time that I did make an audience laugh. And then I remember at the very end of it getting a standing ovation, and if nobody's ever felt a standing ovation in their life, I mean, it's just parents being polite. I don't know that we did anything in the nativity that was, worthy of a standing ovation in reality. But it was an amazing feeling to have, and that really set me on this path of performance. I did my first professional acting job a year later. And then I've been on theater in the theater ever since. In my late teens, I transitioned from theater into film and television. As you said, I've got some really fun, notable credits. The newest one with a wonderful UK export, the amazing Jude Law. I got to I got to do a thing with him and Nick Holt called The Order, which is just a phenomenal film, amazingly directed.
I've come across that. I haven't watched it yet, but okay.
Okay, you just gotta. It's such a good show and powerful and needed at this time. It's based on a true story, and it's events that took place in the early '80s. And the fact that it's still an issue and still poignant today in 2025 is,
speaks to its relevance.
It speaks to its relevance and the way that it was shot too. It doesn't placate to an audience, but it also doesn't talk down to an audience, but it also doesn't talk up to one. Like you get some of those movies that really try to be super artsy and pretentious.
Yep.
This one is a movie for a movie's sake. It does what it needs to and says what it needs to in a way that is accessible to most people. So I really, really, really enjoy the film.
All right, I'll check my local cinema and see if it's still playing, or I'll look for it on streaming.
Amazon. It's on Amazon.
Okay, I'm gonna get it on Amazon. Okay, so that is you coming into public speaking. I'm quite impressed that you actually started going in professionally, right from when you were young. Looking at you right now, you actually exude a lot of confidence. I can literally feel it from the screen. Do you attribute that to so much time you spent on and off stage professionally, or is this something that you would say you were born to do?
I think column A and column B. I think it's a little bit of nature, and I think it's a little bit of nurture. Being in the theater at an early age gave me the confidence to be on stage and to perform and to just be myself. Like that's one of the things. Being in the arts, you have the ability to express yourself while expressing other characters.
Characters,
You
yep,
know,
yep, yep.
it's amazing how really the art of acting is finding humanity within each character. Like
Hmm.
really good villains are
I
good
like
villains
that.
not because they're bad,
Hmm.
but because there is rationale behind what they're doing.
Hmm.
However horrible it may be,
Okay.
they have reason and purpose and drive.
Hmm.
And so finding those bits in ourselves of how you can connect to that character, even if it's the most heinous person on the planet. And I've played some really, really, really not nice people. But there's still parts of them that I still can connect with.
Yeah.
And so finding those bits of humanity and finding yourself, art particularly in performance art when you're acting, singing, dancing,
Hmm.
allows you to find parts of yourself that maybe you didn't know, or express parts of yourself that maybe you're too afraid or too shy to do in any other setting. It allows you to be free because it's a fairly judgment free place.
Hmm.
And so that allowed me to explore and be confident in who I am. But
Hmm.
at the same time, I also grew up in a household, my mother was incredibly supportive.
Yeah.
And not pushy. Like this was a thing that I wanted to do. It wasn't. She was never a stage mom. In fact, my father passed away when I was 6, which was one of
Hmm.
the reasons why I got into theater to begin with.
Okay.
And my mother really uh, encouraged me to find my own path and do my own thing. But she wasn't that hovering stage mom. She wasn't that we've got to
Yeah.
do this and you've got to be at the
Yeah.
audition. If I didn't want to go, I didn't go.
Hmm.
And luckily for me, there was very few times where I didn't want to go because I absolutely
You
loved
love
doing
what
it.
you were doing, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's
then,
interesting.
they say that it takes a village to raise a child.
Mm-hmm.
And when my dad passed away, my mom, became the sole breadwinner, and she worked for in an accounting firm.
Hmm.
And so she would work long, long, long hours.
Yeah.
12, 16-hour days were not uncommon
Hmm.
for her to be putting in. And so we had a lot of people. My Aunt Terry, mom ended up taking on boarders and nannies, and we'd house people. At one point, I was living in the house. I was the only male figure inside of the house of 8 women.
Wow.
Even the cat and the dog were female. So that was, all of those things contributed to me being. If you want to find your voice, try
Yeah.
being the second youngest human and the only male inside of that dynamic, and you have to find your voice very, very, very quickly.
That would
So
be
yeah,
that
no,
would be a nice motivation to.
right. So where does it lie? I think it's a little bit of both. A little bit of
Okay.
nature and a little bit of nurture.
Right. So now you're here. You're a keynote speaker. I mean, you've done acting and all of that, but the keynotes. It's Are you saying you don't suffer from imposter syndrome? Is that not a thing for you?
No, it is. It depends on the stage that I get onto.
Okay.
So you got to remember, and one of my philosophies and one of the things that I talk about in definitely my training courses, it's
Hmm.
not currently in this edition of the book, but we have a revised edition of the book coming out in September that will discuss some of this.
Oh, is that your book
Um,
on the power to speak naked? Then that's
yeah, the power to speak
okay.
naked. We've
Yep.
got a couple of different
Edition coming up.
things that we talk into it, and so the new edition of that's coming out. And definitely my training courses, I talk about how we are always 3 things at once.
Okay.
We are, and so to somebody, we are a mentor.
Hmm.
To somebody else, we are a peer.
Okay.
And to somebody else, we are a student.
Hmm.
We are, if you are truly living life, you are those
One
3
of these.
things
Yeah.
at the same time,
Okay.
right? Somebody is looking up at me right now going,
Hmm.
I don't know how you do that.
Yeah.
And I would love to be able to do that. Can you show me how to do that?
Hmm.
And then it is my job to then mentor that person along as a mentor.
Yeah.
There are people that I am doing this with that are about my same level, where
Hmm.
we are peers and we are learning together and we are at about the same maturity within this business.
Hmm.
And then there's people that I look up to and I go, I want to be doing it the way that you are doing it, and I'm
Okay.
learning from them.
Yeah.
But again, it's important to remember that we are all those things.
Hmm.
So depending on the stage that I get on, if I get on, my local chamber of commerce, yeah, I have the confidence. I don't have imposter syndrome because I'm the expert and they've asked me to be there. I just spoke at the local Kinet club about week and a bit ago,
Hmm.
and was widely received, and it was on public speaking. And what was funny was the Connect Club was holding its speech competition, and I was one of the judges, and then they had me, because I was
Hmm.
there, deliver
Okay.
the keynote afterwards.
Nice.
So in that scenario, I am 100% confident. But the first time that I ever shared a stage with Tony Robbins
Hmm.
and Phil Town, let me tell you, I was looking at the promoter, and I was like, Salim, what am I doing here? I don't know that I belong in this company. And and yet the audience was very giving, very loving,
Okay.
because most audiences are.
Hmm.
The audience is on your side until you give them a reason not to
Not
be. So
to.
as long as you
Okay.
don't give them a reason not to be, they will continue to be on your side and continue
Hmm.
to be loving and continue to be supportive.
Okay.
And I recognize that. I've known that to be a self-evident truth for almost 40 years, over 40 years now.
Hmm.
So I know that all I have to do as a keynote or as a presenter or a speaker is come and leave my audience slightly better than what I found them. And as long as I can do that, I've done my job. So it's easy to get over the imposter syndrome the few times that it creeps in. It
Okay.
doesn't creep in always, but it definitely creeps in.
Okay. Glad to know that you're human.
Me too. It'd be horrible if I found out I was a cyborg. That would just crush me.
Okay, so let's move a bit further now. I'm going to be really look at analyzing your journey as a keynote speaker. Are you saying in all the speeches you've given, has there been any you've regretted or slightly assessed and said, how did that go? I want to know. I want to know your mental process when you've finally done the keynotes.
Oh, after every talk, I do a post-mortem of it. The
Okay.
things that went well and the things that didn't, things that I would change.
Hmm.
It's constant evolution and improvement, because I've been public speaking now, like I said, over 40 years. So
Okay.
when I'm now into my 5th decade of public speaking,
Wow.
which
You look
just
very
blows
young,
my mind.
actually.
Well, thank you. I moisturize.
I
So
love that.
yeah, lots of water. I stay hydrated, and I put moisturizer on my face all the
This is
time.
very healthy, very important.
It is very important. And so, to that, I've
Hmm.
been doing this a long time, and in all of that time, I have never, ever, 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 ever given a perfect performance or a perfect speech,
Okay.
ever. I have given some that I'm unbelievably proud of, that have gone really, really, really well. And I have given some that I knew that I needed to claw back before they were even done, because I just couldn't get off the stage fast enough, because I was bombing. But again, those bad ones are few and far between, and they're all learning experiences. So yes, I do a post-mortem after absolutely every speech, and know the ones that didn't go well, and work on strategies to make them so
To
that they
make
don't
them
happen
better.
again.
Okay, that's really 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 cool. So there's something I look at when I see a speaker on stage. And maybe you can help me with that. Sometimes, in an attempt to drive home a message, they have to share experiences, and a lot of those experiences are personal. Do you think that there's ever a thing as too much honesty on stage? And when does being vulnerable become oversharing?
So, yes, there is. You can definitely overshare,
Hmm.
And it's a fine line, because I know I'm working with an unbelievably good speaker right now. Like one of my clients right now that I'm working with has been public speaking almost as long as I have,
Okay.
and is well accomplished. Has spoke on amazing stages, but he wants to get better. He wants to take it to the next level, and so he's
Okay.
hired a coach. And I'm lucky enough to be that coach.
Hmm.
He doesn't share enough.
Okay.
And me and him have had fights over this. He's like, but I talk about this time when my friend, got cancer and he died. And I talk about, this time that I was jealous of this other person, and how I was watching TV, and it came to realization. And I talk about how I sabotaged my own Olympic dreams. And of course these are personal. And I'm like, yeah, but you're guarded with that story. You're not, there's a really, really good speaker that I've worked with, Jared Morrison, says it better than I ever have. You can tell the truth without being honest. And I find that the speakers who hold back are doing that. But then there's the opposite of that, where, as you had pointed out, they overshare. They're giving you details that are just unnecessary, or unpleasant or awkward without recourse.
Yeah. So
And
how do you
and
guard
that's
against that then?
well, I keep in mind one of the things that Les Brown taught me, and that is never tell a story without a point, but never make a point without a story. So to what your
Oh,
initial
interesting.
question,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Your initial question is why do they do that?
Hmm.
And that's why, because one of the best ways for us as human beings, you got to remember, we as human beings have been communicating orally for millennia.
Yeah.
And the written word is fairly new, particularly to the masses. Like we've
Hmm.
had written script for thousands of years, but
Yeah.
it's always been the
God,
high and the elite,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? So we don't, the written word, to be able to, go and pick up a book.
Hmm.
I mean, to even go to a public library, that is a concept that is fairly new in
New.
human
Okay.
history, like maybe 200-300 years
Okay.
of actual access
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah,
the
yeah.
written word.
Hmm.
And but before that, we always had oral traditions, and those oral traditions were usually passed on through allegory and
Hmm.
story. And
Yeah.
it's through the stories that we personalize these experiences. I tell you, right? They say never judge a person until you've walked a mile in their shoes. Well,
Okay.
I can't physically walk in your shoes, Kay.
Yeah,
We're
yeah, yeah.
separated by an entire ocean
Hmm.
and a continent,
Hmm.
right? Like
Yeah.
I'm on the west side of
Mm-hmm.
North America
Mm.
and you are in Britain.
Yeah.
Like I can't, right? Like we've got physical barriers between us. But if you tell me your story
Hmm.
and I tell you my story and we have that communication, especially if I'm detailed, one of the things that I learned working with Bo Eason was the more specific you can make a story, the more detailed you make a story, the more universal it speaks to your audience.
Okay.
And I've seen examples of that over and over again to know that it's true. But if you tell me your story and I tell you my story, we can metaphorically walk in
In
each
each
other's
other's
shoes.
shoes. Hmm.
Especially if you're detailed in that story, because if I close my eyes, I can picture what you're seeing.
Hmm.
And if you are very good at telling that story, those details get filled in for me. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you tasting? What are you smelling? What
Yeah.
do you feel? Right? You fill in the sensory experience for me so that as I'm literally walking on that journey with you, then when you tell me what the point of that story is, why you have told it to me, I start to gain that empathy and I start to gain that sympathy and I start to see the world from your viewpoint. I may not agree with it, but at least I can understand it because you have filled in the gaps, you've filled in the details that I need to understand your point of view.
Okay.
And again, we've been doing that for millennia, which is the whole reason why storytelling is so critical and so important as a skill for a public speaker.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So basically, people should still, I think the whole guarding against oversharing, just trying to understand there's a statement you made about don't share unless there's a point to sharing.
Yes. So you have to ask yourself, right? So again, it's Les Brown's quote, never tell a story without a point, never make a point without a story.
Yep, yep, okay.
Your
Yep.
story needs to be in service of the point that you're making. If you're just telling a story to tell the story, then it's
a waste
gratuitous.
of time, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. And again, what are the details necessary for me to understand it? So knowing your audience is really the key because what one audience needs to hear may be an overshare for another audience, maybe an undershare for another audience. So you really, really, really need to take the time to know what your audience needs, what their wants and desires are, really be able to tailor that story so that you are delivering at that optimal level.
Okay. Thanks for that. Then, is there ever a time where you felt like your own advice? Because I need to be sure, I'm trying to understand with public speaking how much power or influence a speaker has over the audience. So, if you're giving advice, is there ever a time when you've had to backtrack on it or reassess and say, you know what, this advice, I'm not sure how far it's going to go?
Yeah. No, I again, when I'm not talking about public speaking, I'm a safety consultant, and my philosophies and thoughts on safety and how safety is delivered have evolved over the 20 years that I've been involved with safety. And there was a time where, I thought compliance was the critical message and that we had to get people following systems and processes. And if they didn't follow the systems and processes, they weren't safe. There was also a time, and my philosophy on it has evolved. I still believe in 90% of this,
Okay.
but when it comes to safety, when it comes to anything, really. If we had a cancer in our body,
Yeah.
right? I come and I tell you, okay, you have pancreatic cancer.
Okay.
You say, oh well, I mean, I guess it's there. It's there. There's really not anything that we can do about it because it's a part of my body and it's a bit of my body now, and we're just going to leave it there? Or do you say,
let's get
treat
rid
it,
of this.
cut it out, get rid of it. I want it out of my body right now. And we tend to do the former with adversity within our workplaces and within our relationships. So, I'll go and I'll be consulting with a company and they'll be like, oh, and I'll be like, you have this really negative safety culture over here, and it's really centered around these one or two individuals who are constantly undermining you. Why don't you just get rid of them? And they're like, oh, well, that's Joe. Joe's been here for 35 years. We can't just get rid of him. Or worse, that's Ed. That's the owner's son. We can't just get rid of him. And I for a long time, I was very prescriptive with that in black and white, in that you're an idiot, just get rid of the cancer, right? You're an idiot, just get rid of the cancer. But I've come to realize that there is that other side to it. There is the relationships and the politics. And maybe you don't have to get rid of the person, but you do need to treat the cancer, right? So maybe you don't cut it out of your body, but you definitely start medicating it. and I've had to have that philosophy evolve because I definitely was of the very prescriptive black and white earlier on in my career. And had made that a keynote presentation and had put that out to hundreds of corporate facilitations where I was saying, just get rid of it. Just get rid of it. And looking back on it now, probably really bad advice, especially because I did it in a very powerful way that had the whole audience nodding along going, yep, we'll cut out the cancer. And was that the right move? 85% of the time, probably, but there is the 15% of the time where there was more subtlety needed. And even if we were pulling out the scalpel, maybe we needed to do it laparoscopically instead of just doing a full-on incision.
Well, we're going to come to a few because now I know I'm talking about your own experiences, but then I'm going to ask you a few things with regards to how to approach presentation. So just be patient with me on a few things. How do we know when a speaker is being real versus strategic? I ask this because a speaker is invited to come to deliver something. They obviously have an agenda, for lack of a better word. It's not negative, but there's an idea behind it. So how do we now know when they are really sharing from their experience or just sharing because they want us to get to the point, the end goal?
So we just know. That's an instinctual thing. When a speaker believes what they say. You also know when you believe what the speaker says. And the two are not necessarily mutually exclusive. A speaker can believe 100% wholeheartedly in what they say and still not have you agree with them. But there's a real disconnect when the speaker is just saying words and you know for a fact that they don't believe them either. But we as human beings have an instinct around that. Maybe some of us are a little bit more honed than the others. But for the most part, we know. Like you have a sense when somebody is full of it. Like you just know. Or if they don't believe what they're saying, or if they're saying it with if they're being guarded, or if there's an ulterior motive, or if there's anything isn't quite right. You get the sense. You may still go along with it, but you still get the sense. And a lot of that has to do with I can't prove this, but it is my opinion that I've done a lot of study. A good friend of mine, Brandy Sador, has gotten heavily into heart math, and there's a whole science around it and the connection between your brain is not the only organ in your body that has neurons. There's neurons in your heart. There's neurons in your stomach lining. When we talk about a gut feeling, that's a real thing. Like your stomach and your heart are actually thinking a little bit. And they've done studies where you can get the brain waves in your heart, the electromagnetic pulses, like the EKGs. You can, when the heart and the brain are in alignment, that electromagnetic field actually grows.
Okay.
And I can't prove this, but it is my belief that it's that amplified magnetic energy
Mm.
that we feel as human beings
Okay.
as
Gut
a
feeling.
sixth sense to when
Yeah.
somebody is being right. Because if somebody believes in what they're saying, if they've got their heart and their mind connected, you
Mm.
can feel it. It radiates through. And it radiates through mediums too. Like
Mm.
you know when I'm jiving, even on a distance call.
Mm.
When we get that heart and brain in alignment, I have the ability to then tune your heart and brain into alignment. And as that sphere grows, that electromagnetic field that has an impact on other electromagnetic fields, right?
Okay.
There's sympathetic harmonies within the electromagnetic wavelength. And if we can get everybody in tuned, that's where, if you've ever been to just an incredible concert,
Mm.
right? Whether that's a rock concert, a jazz concert, a country concert, a philharmonic concert, whatever it is, music is one of those things that is a universal, particularly because it works on wavelengths.
Mm.
But if you've ever been to a really good one and you have an entire auditorium who just feels it all at once, because music has the ability to tune people in at to same rhythms.
Okay.
And if you've ever been and experienced that, you can do that speaking. It's a little bit harder because music, again, calms the mind, stills the heart, gets literally everybody at the same beat.
Beef.
But if you've ever been to one of those concerts where everybody erupted, or everybody felt the tingle on the back of their neck at the same time, and you literally feel it through the crowd, that's
Mm.
that heart mind connection really swelling, and that electromagnetic field growing. And you can measure it. Like they scientists can actually go and measure that, because human beings are basically just walking batteries. And you can measure that wavelength increase.
Okay.
And the opposite is true. If I'm saying something and your body's like, oh, this guy's full of shit, your heart is starting to do weird stuff. Your mind is starting to do stuff. That synchronicity goes off. That electromagnetic field shrinks, and
Mm.
that's what you can feel as when they talk about uncomfortable energy
Yeah.
in a room or in an
Yeah.
audience. And
That's the
the other
vibe.
thing is too, even if the people don't want to believe in the science part of it, and I strongly suggest any listener of the K Touch go and do a little bit of research into heart math. I am not the expert. My friend Brandy is. I'm just giving you some ideas,
Yeah. Yeah.
things
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I've pieced together.
That's fine.
But I can give you anecdotal evidence, and that is: have you ever walked into a room after somebody's had a fight,
Yeah.
but you didn't hear the fight?
Yeah. But you
You
felt
don't
that
know that
something
they
was wrong.
fought,
Mm.
but you walked in. You're like, "Ooh, that's janky." Was
Yeah.
with ooh.
What's gone wrong?
You
Yeah.
can feel it. Like the human body has this ability to alter its environment on a very molecular level, and on a spectrum level too, on the electromagnetic spectrum. And because we are, again, basically walking batteries, if we get hypercharged to an emotion,
Mm.
we literally input that emotion and then output that emotion into our environment.
Okay. Okay. That's it, because I want to be sure you see, like you said, you listen to a speaker and you just want to be, you want to trust. That's the word. You want to trust where the speaker is coming from in order for the speaker's message to impact you the best way possible. Should a speaker, now this is an interesting one, should a speaker be held to the standards that they speak on? So you hear the story,
Yes.
you hear the talk about hear what I say or listen to what I say, but don't do what I do.
Yeah.
What do you think about
Do
that?
as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, not as I do.
And yeah, and no, I think if you're going to say a thing, you need to live that thing.
Okay.
You know, it's one of the reasons why there's nothing in my book that I haven't done and won't continue to do.
Hmm.
And because it's all things that I know to be effective in what I'm doing. I would never, ever, 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 ever ask somebody to do a thing that I'm not willing to do myself. And I think that's just good leadership, whether you're a speaker or whether you are a leader in the community or a leader within your
own close
work
circle,
environment,
Yep.
your household.
Yep.
It doesn't matter where you are the perceived authority. It's still incumbent on you to practice what you preach. And if you're not willing to practice what you preach, you definitely shouldn't be preaching it. Because again, it comes to that heart math thing. You can do it. Like, make no mistake, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of speakers out there who are full of it. and who are doing things that are counter to what they're saying. What they practice in real life is not what they're saying on stage. But they tend to flame out really quick. They flame out because it's not sustainable. Because at some point somebody goes, that ain't right. That something ain't working here.
Yeah. Okay.
As long as you can be doing the things that you say, and first of all, it makes it so much easier as a speaker because there's no contradiction in your messaging. And then and the other thing is too, like, the best speakers are the ones who, as you'd pointed out, share anecdotal evidence from their own lives. This is my story. This is my experience. This is what I have learned through these trial and error. This is what I think to be true. It's so much easier to remember that if you're not full of it, right? As soon as you start trying to pull in other sources that you really don't know what you're talking about, or you're telling people to go do a thing that you wouldn't do yourself, that's when everything goes off the rails.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna jump straight into the book. I mean, this is for me, all we've had in this conversation so far is more like a pre-conversation before the actual conversation. So I know in your book you've talked about how essential it is to be naked in your approach and your truth, and this is really important for career advancement, negotiating salary increases. It even helps with your social standing. For instance, it's a good way of having conversation and getting to know people. One of the things you say is people should just drop the notes, ditch the notes, drop the slides, and just speak. Isn't that a recipe for disaster?
Depends on how well you've prepared. So the problem is most people prepare wrong. And they spend their whole time trying to memorize that slideshow or this entire block of text.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, as an actor, that was my job for a long time, was to memorize text. But I didn't memorize the whole play. I memorized my lines, and then I memorized my lead-in lines. And eventually, over the course of months and months of rehearsal, if I was doing theater, because I didn't have that luxury if I was doing film and TV. But if I'm doing theater, you rehearse for a few months, and you maybe start to know the flow of the scene, and you start to know the other lines, and you know 3 or 4 before you, or maybe you've done it so many times, it's a recurring role for you, that you can go through the whole play and almost do it note for note for note. But that takes years and years and years and years. And what ends up happening is these people have a week, 2, 3 to prepare a presentation, and they want to memorize the whole thing. I'm going to memorize 30 minutes. I don't do 30-minute monologues. I would defy you to find a 30-minute monologue anywhere in film and television. You know, even when you see those comedy specials, those comedy specials, they don't learn those jokes note for note for note.
Okay.
They learn story arcs and beats. And some of the really, really, really good ones, like Mike Birbiglia, might create a one-man stage presentation, one-man show, where it's more artistic and there's a little bit more lighting and there's blocking that goes with it and props. But those are still only an hour long. And again, I would be willing to bet that the whole thing is not actually memorized, and what is memorized has taken months, if not years, to do. So most people spend this whole time trying to memorize a script, and it's not the right way to go. What you should be worried about is, what are the key concepts that I have to get through? And then again, never make a point without a story. Never tell a story without a point. If I need to give a presentation, what is my personal story that ties to this point that I'm trying to make so that I can illustrate that point? Because do you know what I know instinctually without having to memorize it? My stories. Because I've lived them.
It's a lived experience for you, so...
Exactly. So the recall is there, Kay. I don't have to memorize the words when I tell you a story. Because I know the story. I may not say it the same way twice, but it'll be really close 90% of the time. I mean, you pointed out, I've been on over 300 podcasts in the last year and a half. If you were to listen to it, I probably tell the same 4 stories on 80% of the podcast. Do I say it the exact same way every time? No, because it's influenced by the conversation that I'm having with the host and how we're coming to it and what point I'm trying to illustrate at that time. But I bet you I say it pretty close each and every time. And that's the real way to prep. The proper way to prep for a speech is not learning this big block of text, but rather reminding myself of the concept that needs to be communicated, and then practicing how to make that
Yeah.
concept
Yeah. It
land.
makes it relatable, doesn't it? More relatable than mechanical. It makes it
Yes.
more natural, as it were.
Well, and I'm glad that you used the word mechanical, because that's the problem with the script, is that I'm locked into this gear track.
Mm.
And if any of the gears slip, I have absolutely no way of making the machine continue to run.
Yeah.
The story that I like to tell about this is if I was to enter it into a GPS, right? I want to come visit you in the UK.
Yeah.
If I tell a story, if I have a story framework of knowing that I need to the journey that I need to take us on is travel us from here in Calgary to you in the UK.
Yeah.
If I give myself the freedom of a story framework, now I can choose my method of travel. I could go to the airport and I can hop on a direct Air Canada flight and take 015 from Calgary to London Heathrow.
Yeah.
Or maybe I have a snowstorm, right? If I've memorized it, yeah, if I've memorized a script, I'm locked into flight 015.
True.
But if I have a story framework, I can go, well, you know what? I can't get to the airport, but I have a perfectly good truck, and I can drive to Toronto. Then I can get on a plane from Toronto. I can't get all the way to the UK because of something in Toronto went mechanical, so maybe I'll fly to Halifax, and I can get on a boat in Halifax.
Yeah.
Maybe I can make it over to Wales, and maybe I detour through Wrexham on my way to London. And then you're not in London anymore, you're down in Surrey, so now I got to get down to Surrey, but it's okay because I was able to, hitch a ride with the lorry and make it there, right? Like, I have the ability and the freedom to pivot if I know a general story framework, which I don't have if I'm locked into this PowerPoint presentation and this very demanding script that goes with it.
Yeah, good point with that one. Yeah, so I see what you meant by that. I just needed some understanding, a bit more understanding on it. But again, on your book, what do you think about being naked, being authentic, but through that going against societal, cultural, or professional expectations? So, for instance, in an attempt to speak, you would come out or appear rebellious against systems that have. There's so many speakers that their MO seems to be more to stir up as a result of their presentations. What do you think about that?
I think it's effective if you're doing it for a reason and that you actually believe in that. That you're, again, why? It all comes down to why. Why are you doing that presentation? What is the point of it? If it is to...
I mean, you look at people like Jordan Peterson.
Yes. Oh, yes. Okay, so, and I'm glad that you bring a fellow Canuck up, because I do follow Jordan Peterson. I do not agree with 90% of the things that come out of Jordan Peterson's mouth.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure Jordan Peterson believes everything he says.
He says, yeah, okay.
I don't believe Jordan Peterson is being contrary for the sake of being contrary.
Oh, right, yeah.
I think Jordan Peterson is being contrary for the sake of demanding that other people look at an alternate viewpoint. That, to his credit, Jordan Peterson doesn't feel should be considered an alternate viewpoint. He thinks it is the viewpoint.
Yeah.
And that what is contrary is the people who are still blinded to what he feels should be reality.
Okay.
And I think that is part of his appeal and his magnetism for the people who really enjoy listening to him. And it's part of the frustration for those of us who don't necessarily agree with him.
But you understand that he has to be authentic in order to pass his message across.
I believe him to be an authentic person. Now, that said, I know other people who try to duplicate what he does in a very unauthentic manner, and they, again, get a short-term following, but then it shrivels fast because they don't have the actual underlying conviction that somebody like Jordan Peterson has. Jordan Peterson is willing to stand up to his certifying body and say, I will not bow to your demands, even if it harms me on a professional level in this sphere. Because by holding to my conviction here, I am able to better serve over here. And at some point, he has weighed the pros and cons of that and feels that holding on to his convictions on this side is more important to his integrity, to the people who he wants to follow,
Yeah.
versus this. Again, to his credit and disadvantage in some cases.
That's I like the way you've answered that. Yeah, because usually speakers, not all speakers, but some, by virtue of what it is they say, it goes against cultural norms and all of that. So and they have to be ready to handle the consequences that come with that. So here we have the rise of the internet, we have the rise of social media. How much responsibility do you feel, if any, speakers should have in terms of how their words are interpreted and actualized?
That's a good question. I think it's not just speakers. I think that anybody with a platform who is communicating an idea has an obligation to ensure that the thoughts and the theories that one is putting forward are understood by the intended audience.
Okay.
The flip side to that is anybody can interpret any word in any way.
Yep.
And if you misinterpret my words, that's on you.
Yeah, because I can't blame the speaker, right?
But if you come to me and say this is what you said and I don't correct you, that's on me.
True.
No, one of the things that I talk about in my book is the importance that speakers have on making sure that if you are saying something, that your audience is understanding it and having multiple checkpoints within that presentation so that they don't walk away with a misinterpretation.
How do you then? Because again, how do you measure that? Is it by asking questions, direct questions like, "Do you understand?"
Yes. Yes. Well, and it is actually that simple. More specifically, I do some directly and I do some indirectly.
Okay.
One of my favorite things to do to make sure that an audience is staying engaged is ask them to share. So, turn to a friend, turn to a partner, turn to a stranger, whatever that instruction is, and share one thing that you have taken away from this conversation in the last 10 minutes. And then they turn and they share. Then I will do a little bubble up. Okay, what were some of the takeaways that we've had in the last 10 minutes? And the people will talk up. That is my opportunity to hear what has been perceived as my message. And then if I need to course correct, the other thing that I could do is if I don't want to do the public bubble up because maybe it's early in the day and people don't quite have that trust that I'm not going to turn that share around on them, I will walk the room and listen to what people are saying. Okay, everybody take 5 minutes, turn to a partner, and each of you take 2.5 minutes to say what some of your takeaways are. And then I can listen. And as I listen, I can monitor. And then when I come back and get the presentation back on me, I can say, okay, that was really great. Some of the things that I heard in this conversation, and correct me if I'm wrong, some of you felt this way, some of you felt this way. That's great. And just leave it, or that's great, but, and here is the asterisk. And allows me to make sure that my message is landing in the way that I've intended. Does everybody need to do that? Absolutely not. And depending on the medium that you're communicating through, you may not be able to do that. I mean, you and I are having an excellent conversation that is organic and live right now, but many of the people who are going to be consuming this are not going to be able to interject live with us. They may put comments down afterwards, and if we monitor the comments, we might be able to see that and be able to do some of those things. But not all medium allows for it. But you should still be conscious of, again, it comes down to conviction. If you believe in what you're saying, then there shouldn't be too many issues with misunderstanding. Making sure that you are continually checking your message when you can so that there isn't misinterpretation, and then honing and refining your message as you start to do that. One of the things that I had to course correct, for the longest time, I told people the thing you're afraid to say is what your ideal audience needs to hear.
Okay.
It's a philosophy I still stand by. But what most people were hearing when I was initially phrasing that idea and concept was, tell the world your deepest, darkest secret and everything will be fine. Not the case. Not the case. But that's what people heard. And I had to be very careful that the thing that you covet, like, it may be your deepest, darkest secret, but I'm not saying to share that with the world. I'm not saying to put that on a YouTube video and hit send. What I'm saying is, the person who is viewed as a leader in society is not necessarily the bravest or the smartest, but it is the person who speaks first. And a perfect example of this is anybody who's ever gone through any form of educational system where you were provided an exam by an instructor or a teacher or a facilitator that had a mistake on it. And everybody in the room got to question 7, and they were like, I don't get it. I don't get it. But nobody said a thing.
Anything, yeah.
Until finally, somebody gets brave, and Kay puts up his hand, and he goes, Mr. Foley, question 8 here. The question is 2 plus 2 equals, and it's 4 multiple choice questions. We have 2, 3, 5, and 6. Now, I'm pretty sure 2 plus 2 is 4, but that isn't an option.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Foley looks at it and goes, oh, okay, sorry. I must have made a typo when I was typing this. It should be 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
The correct answer on my answer key is C. So if everybody puts C, even though 5 is wrong, I know that, just put C. But what happens when you are the brave one to stand up and say that, Kay?
You're the one that people look up to as being,
Because what happens? Everybody in the class goes, instantly after you say that and the correction comes through, what do they all do? Somebody else goes, oh, I was worried about that too. I didn't get it. I was just going to go ACDC, BCDC, right? Like all of a sudden, everybody else starts speaking up.
Yeah.
But you are the one that was the leader because you were the one that said it first. And that's usually where leadership comes from. It's the people who are willing to speak up first. So when I say that thing you're afraid to say, it's not necessarily your deepest, darkest secret, but it's the thing that's ringing in the back of your head that you're like, that's not right. That's not right. And maybe everybody else is saying, no, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. But you're the Jordan Peterson in the room going, no, it isn't.
Yeah.
And you stand up and speak. Now, half of the class, 3/4 of the class, 90% of the class may all turn around at you and say, no. But there's going to be a couple people who are like, oh, I'm so glad you feel that way. I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Your ideal audience is not the people who disagree. Your ideal audience are the people who are so grateful and so thankful that you said it first, that they want to know more about what you have to say.
That's an interest. I never heard that said before. Your ideal audience are the ones who would actually seek more from you and be more interested. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll chew on that for a while. Talking a bit more, I'm sorry, I know I'm going a bit into this whole controversial aspect of public speaking, but bear with me a bit. What do you think about policing free speech? So the idea of, because everyone says they want to be able to speak freely, but we also know that there might be consequences from that. But who then gets to police free speech? What are your thoughts on this?
I think we as society should be policing our free speech.
Okay.
And I understand, I am a large proponent of freedom of press, freedom of speech, that we should have the ability to speak what's on our mind. But I think what is missed with that, and what comes with our social contract, is we can't then be surprised when there is reaction to the things we say. And we can't be mad, and we can't put it out and be like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Well, no. What you're saying is your opinion, and you are entitled to your opinion. And you're entitled to express your opinion. But you are not carte blanche protected from the repercussions of expressing your opinion.
Yeah, true.
That is, and that can't be legislated. That can't be a law or a thing. That just needs to be part of the social contract, and understanding where is this message appropriate. Because frankly, you should have the freedom of expression and the freedom of speech and the ability to make what you feel is art, or make what you feel is a poignant statement, or defend a point of view that you feel is being crushed.
Yep.
But at the same time, you have the moral responsibility to be aware of where you are placing that messaging.
Yeah.
I, by nature, am a nudist. I do not like wearing clothes. I would rather be. I joke that the power to speak naked, right? I've legitimately done a keynote presentation without any of my clothes on once for charity, and I didn't feel awkward doing it. The audience felt awkward. Oh man, did they? After about 5 minutes of it, I gave them relief, and I stood behind a podium, which is something I very, very rarely do. But like, I would be naked. But there's a social contract. I can't show up on your podcast right now, Kay, and be like, hey, and then I can't turn around and be like, but this is who I am. This is my authentic self. Yeah. Even though it is, my purest form of my expression is me without clothes on, I still have a social and moral contract with you to not show up in that way without some kind of permission and barrier.
Yeah.
And I think people forget that part.
Okay.
That, right, with great freedoms come great responsibilities. And these, if you don't take the responsibility side,
yeah,
you can't have the freedom side.
You can't have the freedom side. Okay. Yeah. 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 That's a good way of seeing it. Being real, I agree, is a good policy. But how do you then reconcile being real with the audience's expectation of a polished version of the truth? So sometimes in being real, it might be messy. There are areas that may not necessarily have the polish, but then you have to deliver it in a way that the audience can digest it. Does my question make any sense?
It does, but I also think that it's a flawed premise. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive.
Okay.
I know what you mean. Like if I off the cuff share a story that I haven't prepped, it won't come across in a tailored and professional, or it may not come across in a polished manner.
Polished manner, yeah.
But that doesn't make it less real.
Less true. Okay.
And just because it's real doesn't mean that it can't be polished. Like I am not holding back. This is an unrehearsed conversation that you and I are having. Yeah. Many of the concepts that I'm discussing, I have rehearsed before, and therefore they are more polished than some of the other stuff that I've discussed. But I would say that everything that I have presented to you today, I've presented in a professional manner.
Yeah.
And has a professional polish to it, even though a lot of what you're asking is unprompted, unscripted, and I'm having to form my opinion on the fly, or not necessarily form the opinion on the fly, but express what my viewpoint is on the fly in an unrehearsed and unpracticed manner. It's still professional.
It's still professional, but that speaks a lot to your experience in speaking, because then you already have some understanding of how to present an answer in a way that's...
Counterpoint, does it speak to my experience as a speaker, or does it speak to me being very grounded in my opinions and who I am, and having an inner strength and willingness to say a thing and then back it up?
Okay.
I would argue that it's actually the latter, not the former.
Okay.
Because I know tons of people who are professional speakers who've been doing it 30, 40, 50 years who still have an inability to back up the things that are coming out of their mouth.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would say that it's more that I have strength in my convictions, and I'm not willing to waste your time or my time by saying something that I think sounds good versus what I know to be true in my heart.
Yeah.
Recognizing that it is my opinion and not fact. My truth, it can be true to me without being fact.
Yeah.
And because I am willing to embrace that as my reality, I'm willing to express any opinion that you ask me based on my current viewpoint. And then if you want to provide further detail or context to it, I'm willing to then factor that into how I continue to view the topic and then represent it. Now, does it help that I've been public speaking for 40 years and I can use my words real fancy like? Absolutely. But I would argue that it's the strength and conviction in what I'm saying versus how I'm saying it that has the larger impact.
Okay. Well, Sean, thank you. You've been an amazing guest. That's my summary of this conversation, and we are coming close to the end of it. And I'd like to, before I ask you for a last word, usually just share what I've been working on. So this is an art podcast. So while you were speaking, you must have noticed that I was looking down at something. It wasn't me ignoring you. I was basically working on the art. So I was trying to make some representation of you.
Oh, I'm excited for this. So
I
excited,
don't,
Kay.
I don't think you're going to be impressed. But in the time we were
Oh, I am.
speaking,
I
in the
love
time
it.
we were,
I look like DB Cooper. Oh, that's awesome. Do you know who DB Cooper is?
no, I'm not familiar with the.
DB Cooper is like this famous hijacker from the late 70s, early 80s. He got away with $200,000 in cash over Oregon. And the composite sketch looks like that. If you would put sunglasses on me, I look like DB Cooper. That's the greatest thing I've ever seen ever. Oh, I'm so in love with that.
Oh
That's
my God.
beautiful. I need that. You need to send that
No,
to me.
you're definitely getting this as a way of thanking my guests. I usually send them the original copy of what it is that I've made, so I can't wait to get it across to you.
I'm
Um,
so thrilled. I'm going to frame it. I'm going to send you a picture of it framed. I'm putting it in my office.
no, but honestly, I wanted to really appreciate you for this. But before we come to the end of this, do you have a last word for anyone who's considering the whole idea of public speaking as something to aspire to? And yeah, do you have anything to encourage them?
Would. And I would say that, we alluded to it in our conversation. That thing you're afraid to say is what your ideal audience probably needs to hear. Um, and so many people feel that they can't public speak, that they're afraid of public speaking. You're not afraid of public speaking.
Hmm.
You may be afraid of public judgments, but you're
Mhm.
not afraid of public speaking. We speak publicly on a daily basis, or commerce as we know it would collapse. Anybody who's ever been to a restaurant and ordered food has spoken in public, probably talked to a stranger if you didn't know your wait staff, and gotten the thing that you wanted because the food that you asked for came to your table. So you're not afraid to speak in public. You're not afraid to speak to strangers. You're not afraid to ask for what you want in this life. What you're afraid of is public judgment. And that is usually the biggest barrier to people expressing themselves. And it's a disservice to the world because you have no idea the impact your story could have if you don't share it with the world. And if you'll indulge me, you never make a point without a story, and you never tell a story without a point. So I would like to illustrate this point with a very brief story.
Hmm.
A good friend of mine does a presentation called the 10-Minute Time Machine. And the 10-Minute Time Machine is about basically a decades-long struggle that he had with mental health and addiction,
Okay.
where he felt that the world, and particularly his two young children, who at the time were like 6 and 8, would be better off in this world if he were not in that world.
Oh,
And
wow.
he spent a decade trying to find the perfect combination of alcohol and narcotics that would allow his body to drift off peacefully with minimal intervention on his part, that would still keep his life insurance intact so that his kids would get the money. Now, understand that for a living, this man sells life insurance. So talking about his idolization, his mental health issues, and him wanting to unalive himself, not very good for business. Probably not a great thing to present publicly. But he does this presentation. And me and him were both speaking. He was the final presentation. I was the second last presentation of a large conference, 2.5-day workshop with multiple speakers coming in. And I gave my presentation, and then he gave his presentation. And the way that he delivers it, it's about a 45-minute one. You laugh, you cry, you laugh some more, you cry a lot. It's a heavy topic, but he does it with grace and beauty because it is his story. He tells his story, his viewpoint, why he thought that way, where he was. And then at the end, he says why he doesn't feel that way anymore. Because the whole point of the 10-Minute Time Machine is he talks about the day and the specific moment when he got that combination right. See, he'd been divorced from or separated from his wife for many years. She had full custody of the kids because he was a struggling addict, in and out of rehab. Never could make it stick. Always relapsed. And one day he'd feigned sobriety just enough at a family function that in an act of desperation, because his ex had not had a break in years with the kids, she just needed time for herself with her new partner, just to go on a date just for a couple of hours. And he had feigned sobriety enough that they trusted him to take the kids. So he took his kids. Normally it had to be supervised, but this time he got them unsupervised. He put them to bed, did the bedtime routine. But what happens when you're an addict? You get locked into the habit. And he went to bed and he woke up and he forgot the kids were there and he got into his little habit and his routine. And that day, of all the days for it to happen, he got it right. And he talks about the moment where he started to feel that everything was happening and that he was actually going to be successful in his mission. And then his son leaned over his couch because by the time he got this right, it was 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And his son was standing above him and he says, "Daddy, are you okay?" And at that point, my friend's eyes snapped open and his whole conscious and being, he was having an out-of-body experience. He was floating above himself and he was like, "No, this can't be it. You can't do this. Not in front of the kids. Why are the kids here? The kids shouldn't be here. You can't be here. It can't be now." And all he could muster in this stupor was to say the word help. And his son phoned 911. The ambulance came. My friend was legally dead at that point. They managed to resuscitate him, revive him. They got him into emergency. They pumped his stomach. They were able to bring him back to life.
Yeah.
And he tells this story as a warning because he knows what that idolization is like, what feeling like that's the only option is like. And he explains to people, this is where I'm at. This is where I was at, but this is what's on the other side of it. Yeah. There's two options there. And option B is permanent. Option A is to not do it, and you should take A. And this is why, and he explains it. Anyways, he gives this speech. It's phenomenal. I've seen him do it a couple of dozen times. Every time he knocks it out of the park because he's a phenomenal speaker and orator. In the audience that day was a lady by the name of Charlene. Charlene had been gifted tickets to this event by a friend. She went to be polite. It happened over a Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday, and on Monday, she'd picked up a spot up in the mountains overlooking the lake that she, too, was going to make that ultimate decision. But then she heard my friend speak. And she reached out to the organizer and said, "Listen, this is where I'm at. I need you to take my gun, and I need you to get me help." And the organizer reached out, and we all got together, and we made sure that she received the help that she needed. Fast forward 1 year later, she reached out to the organizer and said, "Listen, you know what happened last year. This is where I'm at. I'm in an amazing headspace. I feel compelled to share my story. Can I do it?" Now, was she a polished speaker? No, okay, she wasn't. I was privileged that I got to work with her a little bit and help her out, but it was her story and hers to tell, and I just said, "You just tell your story." And she did. She told it from the heart. It wasn't polished, but it was real, and it was honest. And when she finished, 3 people in the audience reached out to her at various stages of planning and said, "I need help and your story impacted me." So by my friend sharing his story, even though he sells life insurance and probably shouldn't talk about the ways that he was planning, he managed to impact another person, another human being who is still alive today because of what he shared with her. And then she shared what she felt she needed to share, what she felt compelled to say, and 3 people are still alive today because of that. And I don't know how further out those ripples go, but I'm sure they continue to stretch. The point is, you never know the impact that that story will have, whatever your story is. You may feel it's insignificant, or that you shouldn't share it, or it's not something that polite people talk about. But if you say it in the right way, in the right environment, you have no idea the ultimate impact that your story could have. And by not sharing it, you are doing the world a disservice. So, if I could give one message to your audience today, that is it. That you have no idea the power of your story until you speak it into the world. And if you need help discovering it, there are thousands of coaches around who would love to help you discover the power of your story and how to share it effectively. And just go find those people that you resonate with, that you can work with, that can help you be that better version of you, and go and get your message out to the world.
Thank you, Sean. That was a very balanced last word there. Please tell us a bit more about how to reach out to you if anyone's interested in contacting you.
Well, the best way to find me is through the website, which is SeanTylerFoley.com. Sean is spelled the proper Irish way, SeanTylerFoley.com. But that's probably going to be posted in the show notes. So before they come to my platform, Kay, they're already on your platform. So what I would ask humbly is, since they're coming to you and listening to the K Touch, and that's how they've been introduced to me,
Yep.
Before they get off your platform and come to mine, I would ask that they give you a 5-star review and say why. There's a little comments section there, and it's not just for decoration. It's not just to separate the stars from the show notes. That comments is for people to use to tell Kay what it is about the show that you enjoy. What was one of your favorite guests? What was one of your favorite artworks that he's ever done? What is one of the favorite conversations? What was something that made you think? What was something that you hated? What was the thing that really bugged you? Let Kay know, because that's going to help him bring on better guests to serve you. It's going to help you because you're going to get better guests to serve you. It's going to help me because the more people who are being served by this, the more people will potentially see this episode, the more people will see me.
Yeah.
So we can all help each other by you giving a 5-star review to Kay for the show that you're already enjoying and consuming and have gotten to an hour and 5 minutes into. So you've obviously enjoyed this one. So give it a 5-star review. Tell Kay why. And if you're willing to give the show a 5-star review, if you come to SeanTylerFoley.com, we'll give you a free PDF download of The Power to Speak Naked so that you don't have to spend the $17.95 in stores. You'll just get the PDF for free. I'll give you access to my Drop the Mic speaker series, which is a series of 7 5-minute videos. You can digest them over a week, make you a more powerful, more confident speaker. Insider tips. They're real easy to implement. No fluff, just meat and bones. We'll also invite you to my Endless Stages Facebook group, where you can join, find a peer supportive group, test out your stuff in a very supportive environment, tell us your stories, share, learn some things. I go live every Tuesday at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, varying times across the world. You can do the conversions. All of them are then recorded and uploaded, so if you can't make it to the live, you can see all of the recorded content. All of that is my gift to you, but only if you give a 5-star review to Kay. No 5-star review, no free gifts for you.
Sure. I can't say how wonderful it has been to have you on this show. I can clearly see why it is that you are seen as a renowned speaker, and as far as I'm concerned, just a very nice person, an easy person to engage with. Thank you so much for taking out the time to talk to us about your experience in public speaking, for sharing your journey, for talking also about the power to speak naked, and just generally tolerating all the questions that I was throwing your way. It's been
honestly
amazing.
Some of the best questions I've had in over 300 podcasts. I really appreciate the time that you put into them.
Thank you again. So for the rest of the viewers, this is Sean. Follow him on his social pages, and yeah, just show him some love. I can't wait to have him on the show again. Until next time, it's goodbye from me. See you all next time. Bye.